What's going on, guys? How are you doing today? And welcome to another chapter of complete Newbie guide to Path of Exile. So basically now you have like the preparation done. The preparation part is already done and you're already here. And you are here on your class selection screen. So let's take a look at this and I'll explain you in like more detail which these classes are about, and keep in mind that at a certain point in the game you will be doing the thing called the trials and the laboratory, and you will be selecting in pretty much like the multi-class or the subclass for these existing classes. So there are 7 classes which are main classes in the game, and each of these have 3 subclasses except Scion, and Scion only have 1 subclass. So it gives us around like 20 different, I think it's 19 to 20 different classes in the game. So I will go to power building and explain you guys like each class in major detail. What's the difference, what's to think about, and let's take a look at this. So Marauder is the big, giant, strong guy with a giant fucking mace. So basically this is like the brute melee character in Path of Exile. And originally Marauder has 3 different subclasses which are called the Juggernaut, Berserker and Chieftain. Juggernaut is more like the defensive version of the Marauder. He does quite a bit of damage, but at the same time he generates endless charges, so it make him tough against physical damage. He also can stack tremendous amount of armor. So basically Juggernaut is the most defensive subclass of all of these 3. Berserker is like the most offensive class of the Marauder. He can get tremendous amount of damage, like for example this aspect of carnage node here gives you 40% more damage. This is ridiculous. And this new shit called he can also leech quite a bit of damage, and at the same time he basically can have like generate rage, get rage points, and when he kills the enemy he gains rage, and rage makes you faster, and you basically do more damage, and at the same time you start losing life when you get this rage. So not only the character does most damage, but at the same time he is like the most fragile out of all these 3. Now the third one is the Chieftain, and Chieftain is the king of totems. The Ancestral Worship Totem is what people played with Chieftain because he is specialized in melee totems. And he is very good at it. He can also leech life from totems, can generate endurance charges, and basically go totems, and that's about it. Another second part of this Ascendancy is he can also go and play Rider's Fire because recently he got tremendous amount of fire resistance on him. Plus 100 fire resistance is no bullshit at all, and he can regenerate quite a bit of life as well. So Chieftain right now is like have different 2 aspects of going up the Rider's Fire or going totems. Templar in the past used to wear staffs and was more like the melee spellcaster. He used staffs, he cast different spells, but right now he's like entirely the 100% spellcaster, and he has 3 Ascendancies or subclasses as you wish. Inquisitor is like the main giant fucking spellcaster out of all 3. He can penetrate the resistances of monsters performing critical strikes, as well as generate mana and energy sustaining on consecrating ground, and overall He is like the most DPS out of the three, I would say. As a straightforward spellcaster, he is very powerful. The second Ascendancy is Hierophant, and Hierophant is the king of totems as well. He can summon like 4 or 5 different totems, and in the past we use Scion and even the Witch for the totems, but right now Hierophant is like the way to go for totems. He can summon 4 or 5 different totems, leech life, and do tremendous amount of damage with totems. He also utilizes the Arcane Searchers, give different spell buffs as well. The third Ascendancy is the Guardian, and Guardian is mostly like the defensive version of the Templar, because he can stack tremendous amount of auras and buff the other players in the party, as well as buff himself. He is very popular as a support role in the party as well. So Guardian is strong at energy shield generation, as well as buffing himself and the party as well. Witch is also the strong female spellcaster in the world of Path of Exile. And in the past, Witch I think was very much more popular than it is now, but right now Witch is still very strong, and she has 3 Ascendancies and subclasses as well. First, let's start with the Occultist. Occultist is all about curses. She is the master of curses. She has the power to curse hexproof enemies, and basically this is the only way to curse hexproof enemies. She is also very powerful with chaos damage, and can stack a lot of energy shield as well. So the spells like the Essence Drain and all kind of chaos based damage, she is very good at it. The second Ascendancy is called Elementalist, and Elementalist is all about elemental damage. She is like the female version spellcaster of the Inquisitor, basically. She can do quite a bit of heralds, buffing her different sources of elemental damage. She can actually run like 3 different elements, like the ice, fire, and lightning, and use of them very effectively. At the same time, recently Elementalist turned into specifically the Golem Summoner. And many people call Elementalist the Golemancer now, because she can summon additional golems, like 2 more golems actually, and when you summon the golem you can also buff your own damage. So basically she specializes in 2 different aspects. First is buffing all kind of elemental damage and elemental spells, and the second is summoning golems and doing like damage through the golems as well. The third and the most popular, I believe, the third Ascendancy is the Necromancer. Necromancer is all about minions. She is the master of the dead. She can summon skeletons, zombies, specters, buff them, teleport them, give them and her different kind of defensive and offensive buffs, and overall Necromancer is like the best summoner in the game right now. Now let's talk about the Shadow and its 3 Ascendancies. Let's start with the Assassin first. Assassin is actually the master of crit damage in Path of Exile. He was very powerful in the past, and many people used to play Assassin and utilize the daggers and different kind of very fast attacks. He can also generate and use power charges very good, and do very fast and deadly attacks. So he is still the master of crit, and at the same time he can also stack a lot of poison damage, because he has like the part of the tree like Noxious Strike with a high chance to poison on hit, as well as Toxic Delivery. So basically Assassin is all about crit and poison damage as well. The second Ascendancy and the subclass is called Trickster, and Trickster is all about energy shield and all about damage over time and chaos damage. he has that ridiculous node called Harness the Void, when your hits have chance to gain like basically all damage as an extra chaos damage. And he is very powerful character, overall like well-rounded, a good character, stacking tremendous amount of chaos damage over time, as well as stacking energy shield. Saboteur is very unique because he fully specializes in traps and mines. And traps and mines in Path of Exile are like, you know, the separate entities. Traps, generally you just throw trap, it sits on the ground, and when the enemy moves nearby, it has kind of a trigger area around it, and it triggers the enemy, triggers the effect, and the trap basically goes off and does damage. Mines are different because there is a special detonate mine gem, and you can detonate mines manually, and basically mine automatically aims at the enemies. It doesn't need to be triggered specifically. So mines and traps are very unique, and if you're really looking forward to very unique gameplay, you can eventually try Saboteur because he is very interesting, but not for everyone, of course. Ranger is more like the ranged oriented character in Path of Exile, but at the same time there are Ascendancies that were very popular for melee ranged characters as well. Like for example, the Raider is the first Ascendancy, and a Raider is practically can do everything. He can do bows and he can do daggers and swords, whatever. He is very popular with Frostblade skill, for example, because he can stack a lot of elemental damage and a lot of attack speed and move speed as well. He is a very fast and very deadly character. The second Ascendancy is called the Pathfinder, and the Pathfinder is even named as the Flask Finder sometimes, because he is basically the master of flasks. He increases the effectiveness of flask with his ascendancy points. And flasks in Path of Exile are very powerful entities, and basically Pathfinder specializes in fast movement skills and abuse of flasks. He can gain flask charges like no one else, and he can be really fast across the map without any specifically, different movement skills. Deadeye is the third Ascendancy, and Deadeye is mostly about projectile damage. He is like the more bow-oriented version of the Raider, and he can also chain. He can get different perks like far shots and can do more damage to the far enemies. He's all about projectile speed, chaining the enemies, killing them with ranged bows and shit, and different ranged attacks and projectile attacks. So he is like straightforward bow projectile attack user. Duelist also have 3 interesting Ascendancies, and overall Duelist is like the dual wielding class, which can dual wield or just wear a sword and a shield, or a dagger and a shield, or whatever. So basically the first Ascendancy is called the Slayer, and Slayer was always the king of leech damage. It's that character that tries to survive in a very close combat, and basically he just leeching the damage of the enemies. He is one of the most popular and I would say that easiest to play Ascendancies of Duelist. Like for any player, both old and new, he is very popular and does quite a bit of damage in this. The second Ascendancy is called the Gladiator, and the Gladiator is like the king of blocking in this game. He can stack tremendous amount of block chance, and block characters are very tough up to a point where they can't really be damaged, because if the block chance is too high, then now attacks can pass through the blocks. He can also go bleed nodes and basically will bleed enemies with physical damage, and they just fucking die and explode. This is also like another route of taking the Duelist. Overall, Duelist is like a cool balance between the offense and the defense on the Duelist Ascendancy. And the third is the champion. And champion is the master of different kind of taunting and intimidating the enemies. He is like the defensive version of duelist. He can stack tremendous amount of defense on him. He can taunt the enemies. He can basically increase the damage for the allies, increase their movement speed. He is fast. He is very defensive. And at the same time he can have fortify as well, which reduces the damage taken. He is like a very defensive guy here on the duelist ascendancy. And the last but not the least, guys, is the most elusive class called the scion. Scion is very unique and he stands really separately from the rest because scion is the only kind of subclass. He has only one subclass called the Ascendant, and Ascendant can specialize and take 2 different nodes from each other ascendancy, like the Templar, the Duelist, the Shadow, the Witch. He can take 2 of this and utilize the powers of 2 classes at the same time being a scion as well. So he is like the master of everything, and he can basically do very interesting interactions like playing totems and going crit, or stacking chaos damage and going with the bows and shit. So basically you can do a lot of things with scion. You can do the Templar, Witch, Shadow, Marauder, whatever. You can mix things this and that and see what's good for you. And scion is the most flexible out of all classes out there, and like the most advanced, I would say, as well. So this is it, guys. Thanks for watching. I really hope you understood a bit more about each classes in general and selected the class for you to play in the Path of Exile.